Hello and welcome to another video of Python programming. Today we will be looking at data structures and types, including lists, tuples, and Booleans. Let's start by reviewing what we learned in our last video. We learned how to open IDLE and how to run a program. We talked about adding comments to your code and why it is useful. And finally, we learned how to use print statements, calculations, and variables in your code. Now, let's begin with today's lesson. Chapter 1. Lists and Tuples. Lists. A list is a data structure in Python. Elements in a list are what we call items, and they can be changed anytime you want. Items are located inside of square brackets and are separated by commas. Some possible items a list can have include strings, numbers, and even other lists. So this is an example of a list. We say here animals, that's the variable name that the list is stored inside, and the list is inside of square brackets, and the items are separated by commas, and we have our items, lion, tiger, elephant, dog, and bear. And these items are inside of quotes because they are pieces of text. Exercise 1. Practicing lists. Open up a file in IDLE like we did in the last class and follow and code along. Okay, so let's open up an IDLE file. And I'll just type in the same list we had earlier. Say animals equals to, remember we use square brackets for lists, and we would say lion, inside of quotes, it's a piece of text, tiger, elephant, dog, and bear. Now, if we print out animals, let's see what we get. And we don't use quotes here because animals is a variable name. So when we print out animals, we do not use quotes. We get the list printed out. This is just a faster way of doing print lion, print tiger. Instead of doing 5 separate print statements like that, you can print it out all at once. Now let's say you want to print out a specific item in a list. Like you don't want the whole list to get printed out, you just want one item in the list to be printed out. Well, this is the way you do that. This is the syntax for doing so. You say print, and inside of parentheses, the list name, and inside of square brackets, index position. And now, in our case, we would say print animals, because that's the name of our list, and the index position. Let's say we want to print out dog from our list. We would say 3. Dog has an index position of 3. Wait, you might be wondering why dog doesn't have an index position of 4, because it's the 4th item on the list. Well, you are true that dog is the 4th item on the list. However, it has an index position of 3, because index position starts counting from 0. So, lion would have an index position of 0, tiger 1, elephant 2, and dog 3, which is why we say print animals 3. And now, if we run our code, we get dog, because dog has an index position of 3. Swapping out items in a list. Okay, so let's say we want to change one of our items in a list. We want to swap out bear with monkey. The way we do so is by saying list name and then index position, the index position of what we want to get swapped out, and the new item. Let's say new item. So in our case, we would say animals, which is the list name, and 4, because bear has an index position of 4, and we would say monkey inside of quotes. Now, if we print out animals, we will get the new list. Lion, tiger, elephant, dog, monkey. Bear got replaced with monkey. Adding items to a list. To add an item to a list, you use the append function. A function is a piece of code that will tell Python to perform some kind of action. We will learn functions more in depth later in another video. So, to add an item to a list, we would say the list name dot append. And what we want to add to the list. So let's say we want to add bear back to the list. Now, when we print, so now let's say, in our case, we would say animals dot append bear. And if we print out animals, we'll get the new list. Bear is added back to the list. Deleting items from a list. If you want to delete an item from a list, you would use the del function. So, to delete an item from a list, this is how we would do it. We would say del and then list name and the index position of the thing we want to get deleted. So index position. So we would say, in this case, del animals. And if we want to delete bear again from the list, we would say 5, because currently bear has an index position of 5. And now if we print the new list out, we will get the modified list. Bear deleted from the list. Lion, tiger, elephant, dog, monkey. Chapter 1 continued. Tuples. A tuple is pretty much the same thing as a list, with 2 subtle differences. 1. Tuples use parentheses instead of square brackets. And 2. You cannot go back and change a tuple like we did with lists. So you cannot go add something to a tuple, delete something from a tuple, nothing like that. So this is an example of a tuple. Numbers equals to 1, 4, 12, 90, 110, 150. As you can see, the numbers are inside of parentheses, not square brackets. And if you try to change something in a tuple later on in your code, you will get this error. Well, that'll be it for this chapter, and let's move on to the next section. Now let's move on to Chapter 2, Boolean Values and Expressions. A Boolean expression is an expression that has to evaluate to be either true or false. When we store Boolean values, true or false, in variables, we always start with a capital letter. Example of a Boolean expression. 5 is greater than 4. This is a Boolean expression because it has to evaluate to be either true or false. There is no such thing as half true or half false. No matter what, it has to be true or false. Storing a Boolean value inside of a variable. In this case, our variable is answer, and the Boolean value is true. And we always start the Boolean value with a capital letter. So if we say false, it has to be a capital F, or true, capital T. Now we'll look at some Python comparison operators. Comparison operators are used by the computer to make comparisons. These comparisons have to evaluate to be true or false, like we learned earlier. So, these 2 equal signs mean equal to. An exclamation mark and an equal sign means not equal to. This opening symbol over here means greater than, and this less than. The greater than symbol and the equal symbol means greater than or equal to, and the less than and equal symbol means less than or equal to. And or in Boolean expressions. And as well as or are logistic operators in Python. For an AND statement to be evaluated as true, every Boolean expression in it has to be true. If even one Boolean expression is false, the whole thing will become false. For an OR statement to be evaluated as true, at least one of the Boolean expressions has to be true. If none of them are true, the whole thing is false. So these are some examples. 5 is greater than 4 and 4 is greater than 3. For this to be evaluated as true, both of the Boolean expressions must be true. In this case, both of them are true, so the whole thing will be evaluated as true by Python. And an example of an OR is 7 is greater than 8 or 12 is greater than 4. For this to be evaluated as true, at least one of the Boolean expressions must be true. In this case, 7 is greater than 8 is false, but 12 is greater than 4 is true. So since at least one of them is true, the whole thing will be evaluated as true by Python. Exercise 2. Practicing Booleans. Now just follow along and code with me. So let's open up the same file we were using earlier. And let's just have some examples of Booleans. You can say print 5 is greater than 4. And now you can run your code. You get true because 5 is greater than 4 was evaluated by Python. And it was evaluated to be true because 5 is greater than 4. However, if we say 5 is less than 4 and run our code, we will get false because 5 is not less than 4. Now let's try storing some Boolean values inside of a variable. So let's say answer equals to true. And we can say print answer. Now run your code. You get true. Similarly, if you say answer is equal to false and print the answer, you will get false. Now we will try using AND and OR in Python. So let's say print 5 is greater than 4 and 4 is greater than 3. And run your code. You get true because Python read 5 is greater than 4 and 4 is greater than 3 and evaluated both of them to be true. And since we are using AND, both of them have to be true for the whole thing to be true. And since both of them are true, we get true returned back to us. However, if we make a slight change and say 4 is less than 3, and then we run our code, we get false because both of them were not evaluated to be true by Python. Now, if we change this AND over here to OR, and now we run our code, we will get true. Why is this? This is because at least one of them is true. The first one is true, but the second one is false. But since we are using the OR operator, only one of them has to be true for the whole thing to be true. And since the first one is true, the whole thing becomes true. And now let's try using some of the Python comparison operators we learned earlier. So we can say 5 equal to 6. And now let's run our code. We get false because 5 is not equal to 6. And if we say 5 is not equal to 6, and now we run our code, we will get true because 5 is different from 6. 5 does not equal to 6. Now if we say 5 is less than or equal to 6, we will again get true because 5 is either less than or equal to 6. So Python returns true back to us. Well, thank you for watching this video and I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the next video from P2S, which will be coming soon. Please smash that like button and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, please let me know down below in the comments. Thank you for watching and I'll see you soon.